Now, in our time of studying musicians, we have not really mentioned Russia. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And it's not that Russia does not have a musical history. Oh, they have a rich musical history. It's that Russia and Europe were really kind of divided for much of recent history. You didn't leave one area to the other. There was kind of it was a closed border. And that meant that there any musical development that was happening in Russia, the rest of the world didn't know about, and it wasn't influencing the rest of the world. That's not to say that it wasn't good stuff. It just didn't have as big of an influence. But the Russians do have a rich musical history, and they're very, very proud of their history. Ironically, their history kind of, as far as our class and Western perspective, begins with this composer, Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. Now, I've provided his name for you in an English transliteration. The Russian alphabet actually has 32 letters in it, more than our 26. And they have shapes in their letters that we don't even have. Like the very first letter, it looks kind of like a upside down and backwards H. That's a ch. They have a letter in their alphabet that makes the ch sound. So what I've written there on the right side of your screen, that's the Russian. That's Tchaikovsky. Well, we can't type those letters in on an American keyboard. And so when we transliterate it, we come up with kind of a phonetic spelling. The only reason I mention this is because it makes researching Tchaikovsky a little bit more difficult. Because if you Google his name, spelled the way I've spelled it here, you will find a lot of information. But if you spell it a little bit differently, like the last letter, if you make that an I instead of a Y, you would still pronounce it Tchaikovsky. It would still be a good transliteration, but you've changed the spelling and now Google will search differently. If at the beginning, instead of TCH, you just use a CH, which still gets you the ch sound, you're going to get another set of results. And so this is something interesting that happens when when you're trying to search in a language other than the original language. You run into these little issues of translation and transliteration. But Tchaikovsky's music has definitely captured the world's attention. And even if the Russians kind of push him off to the side, and I'll talk about why that is in a minute, his music was the first really Russian music to make its way into Europe that made Europeans go, okay, I see what's going on over there. Ironically, Tchaikovsky was not a trained musician. This was not his career. He was a lawyer. He argued cases before the judge. Music was a hobby for him. It was a hobby that he was very, very good at, and then decided to pursue it as a second career. He went to the St. Petersburg Conservatory. St. Petersburg is the second biggest city in Russia. It's a gorgeous city. Um, Learned how to do more composition there. Eventually, even got hired in Moscow, the capital city, teaching composition and harmony and music. So it was a second career for him. He toured extensively into Europe. That's how his music got recognized. And then suddenly he just dies. And if you read the official statements, the official articles, they will say that he committed suicide. But that's controversial not everybody believes that it was suicide. Um, there are a lot of people who believe that he was murdered by his own government. And not to go too far down the conspiracy, route here, but Tchaikovsky was a homosexual. And in Russia in the 1800s, that was not okay. In much of the world in the 1800s, that was not considered okay. And it meant you faced a great deal of persecution. We know that he had relationships with other men. And so, because of that, the Russian government very well may have not wanted their most famous composer to be seen and be known. And so they tried to get rid of him by poisoning him. Of course, we will never fully know if that was true or not. Personally, I do. I think that that is probably what happened. Um, if not, the suicide was definitely a result of being persecuted by the government. In either case, it was a shortened life, and whenever that happens, it makes us wonder what more might he have done had he lived. The thing Tchaikovsky is most famous for, though, are his ballets. The Russian ballet, and their biggest company is called the Bolshoi. You might have heard of the Bolshoi Ballet. The Bolshoi Ballet is one of the, I won't even say one of the, it's the best in the world. There might be some people in Paris who disagree with me, but the Bolshoi Ballet is really, it's the elite ballet company. And they were famous around the world. They toured around the world. This is how Tchaikovsky was able to leave Russia and travel throughout Europe, was because he traveled with this ballet company. And every couple of years, might even have been every year, they would do an exchange with Paris, the Paris Ballet, with Diaghilev. And the Paris dancers would go travel to Russia, and the Russian dancers would travel to Paris, and they would do this exchange. It was that relationship that really made it possible for Tchaikovsky to write this music that we now know so well. His, I don't want to say his best known, but one of his best known is a show called Swan Lake. Now, if you've ever seen ballet in a movie or on a TV show, 9 times out of 10, the production that they're doing is Swan Lake. And 9 times out of that 10, it's all these little girls dressed in white feathers, maybe wearing a swan hat, and kind of running around the stage, which is completely not what Swan Lake is about at all. Like, it's like people who only read the title and never read the book. Like, oh, Swan Lake, it must be about swans on a lake. Yes and no. It's about a boy who's going off to join the military, and he doesn't know if he's got the strength of character to be able to pull the trigger and kill another person if he's commanded to do that. And so he goes off to the family cabin, which is by a lake where there's this swan, and he's contemplating things. And then he kind of has this dream, and the swan becomes like this. It's like a vision quest thing. It's a very different kind of show than what the movies show. But that was beside the point. I kind of went down a rabbit hole there. I'm sorry. The music for Swan Lake, particularly one melody, which is called The Sea in the Moonlight. When sea translates could be the lake. It's the one where the swan is out on the lake at night and he's falling asleep. It's a beautiful classic ballet melody. And chances are you have heard it before. If you have not, then the next one The Sleeping Beauty ballet, if you've ever been to Disneyland or if you've ever seen Disney's Sleeping Beauty, the classic animated movie, you've heard Tchaikovsky's music. You just didn't know it because all the music from that animated film is borrowed from Tchaikovsky. They did not credit him. If you watch the credits, he is not listed. But if you know the music, it's the same music. All Disney did was add words to it. Tchaikovsky wrote dun 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 da 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 dum ba da da da, and then Disney added the I know you, I walked with you once upon a dream. And if you don't even know that one, I I'm positive that you've heard the Nutcracker before. This is a Christmas time ballet, and it's got one of the strangest stories of any ballet. And in fact, Tchaikovsky himself hated it. He said at one point, if he could undo it and like find every copy and destroy it, he would. Which is funny because it's now the one that everybody knows. Like, oh, Tchaikovsky, he wrote the Nutcracker. It's wonderful. He actually he hated it. But I mean, the story, like it's Christmas Eve, and this girl received a nutcracker that looked like a soldier, and she falls asleep with it. And in her dream it comes to life, and then um there's the rat king who comes out and attacks, and uh there's a battle, and then the little girl takes off her shoe and throws it at the rat king, which hits him in the head and is the decisive thing that wins the battle. And then the nutcracker transforms into a beautiful true prince and takes the girl away to his kingdom, which is the kingdom of sweets. And then they all sit down to a great dance where people, all the people dance for him. So there's the dance of all the different types of candies. So there's like the dance of the sugar plum fairies, and there's the dance of the lollipop girls, and there's like it's a really weird and honestly kind of stupid story. But the music's cool and it's familiar. And like I say, when you hear it, I bet you will recognize it. On that one, I'm actually going to have you listen to three different little examples. The first one is the famous march, the 10 soldier march. Then the second one is from that at the end when they're all getting danced for. There's the dance of the sugar plum fairies. And the last one I want to play for you is called Trepak, 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 which is the Russian dance. Now, Tchaikovsky's a Russian. So when he writes a song and calls it the Russian dance, we should pay attention because this is like an authentic look into the sort of Russian music that there is. So, bunch of listening right here. I'm going to send you off and I want you to listen to Sea in the Moonlight from Swan Lake. And then I want you to listen to the main theme from Sleeping Beauty. And then I want you to listen to the three songs from The Nutcracker. And it's a lot of music, but it's great music. And hopefully in each one you find something that you like.